I bought my dream car! Sort of. In this video, let's talk about the new problem child and talk about why it was allowed into the Sprinter Asylum to begin with. I'm going to tell a story that I'm sure some of you are quite familiar with, and in reality, I should not have bought this car. Instead, I should have bought a good running one, and you should too, if you want one. But here's the problem. This 14-year-old car still lists for more than $10,000 easily here in Florida. Not to mention used car prices overall are at an all-time high. So I took a chance on this non-running, non-starting E320 Bluetec. It's equipped with the OM642 V6 turbo diesel engine, just like my old 2008 Sprinter. It came with a dealership diagnosis of needing a starter, and of course, the price was right. I checked it out before I bought it, and overall the car was in astounding shape compared to most Sprinters of the same age, so that definitely helped its cause. We got it towed home and the old starter down. Sure enough, applied voltage to the old starter and it doesn't do anything. So we've definitely got a dead starter on our hands. What the dealership didn't realize though, is that the engine is locked solid. Yeah.
Ooh, wow, this is really tight steering.
This would have been enough to send most people spiraling into something. But I'm part of Florida Van Man. This situation is still salvageable. Getting the engine out of this thing was tough, but a little easier than I originally anticipated. There's enough room in the car to remove the engine, separate the engine from the transmission without having to even pull the hood or most of the radiator or anything. So, yeah, that was pretty easy. However, what we found upon inspecting the old engine was seriously disheartening to say the least. I don't even know how this level of catastrophic failure could have happened without indication or notice from the seller.
That's bad. Oh, Mike.
Carnage. Dun, 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 dun. Lion mother.
Like I stated, this was not disclosed to us at all, and upon dropping the oil pan, we can see why. The frontmost rod from cylinder 1 was dislodged into the crankshaft. Everything was seized solid, and there was a small pinhole in the side of the engine block. Somebody must have really abused this poor engine, but yet taking care of the interior, which doesn't make sense. No matter, after contemplating what to do, contemplating swaps, talking to people, talking to junkyards, we ultimately decided to pony up for a used 152,000 mile engine, same engine OM642, pulled from the same car, just wrecked in the front end. Unfortunately, I had to transplant the wiring harness to the new engine, which, oh man, did you know that it's totally safe to route sensitive wires in a plastic shroud underneath the turbo and in one of the hottest areas of the engine? I can't fathom why Mercedes did this. I almost rerouted it myself, but ultimately I wound up just keeping it stock and removing the turbo to install the new wiring harness. As a result of this though, I needed to reseal everything. And unfortunately, this meant also removing and replacing the already brand new looking bolts that hold this turbo in. Did this engine have a turbo replacement at some point in its life? Getting the engine back in was definitely challenging too, but Bill and I managed to get everything lined up and pushed into place just right. It took some shifting back and forth of the engine, but everything settled in beautifully and we were able to hand start all the bolts with no problem. So I took an afternoon, cleaned everything up, made sure all the engine mounts were nice and tight, made sure all my wires were nice and tight and connected, double checked everything, put the exhaust back up, hooked all the lines up, poured some oil in it, poured some coolant in it, poured some power steering fluid in it. At this point, I'm about 3 weeks into it and I want to hear this thing purr. My hard work finally pays off as it's ready to start. I grabbed an alcoholic beverage for good luck,
Cheers.
double checked all the connections once again, double checked that I did indeed remember to put oil in it, and of course put a new filter and all the O-rings in it. And
before we try and start the Bluetec, Florida Van Man would like to announce that we are on Patreon.
Patreon patrons will get exclusive first dibs at new videos before they come out. And in general, Patreon supporters, you guys are supporting the channel, you're supporting us, you're keeping us making more videos about Sprinter vans and related vehicles and showing you how to keep these things healthy and running for a long time. So thank you to everyone who's already become a patron, and thank you to those who subscribe to Patreon or become a patron from this video.
At first, nothing. And I wasn't so concerned because I know this tends to happen when you leave an engine non-starting for a while or leave an engine without its fuel system connected. So I decided to try it again. And when I tried it again,
Holy shit, it fucking lives.
I let the car run and sort itself out for about 15 to 20 minutes and just listened to it because, man, this is a good sounding engine. This thing is low miles for a diesel and it absolutely purrs, even with a couple exhaust clamps loose and a couple bolts not tight. So the next day, I tightened everything down for real, put the fan and the front brace back on, and backed it out of the yard under its own power.
E320 about to roll under its own power for the first time that we've seen. Just took it off the blocks after swapping the engine. Bought it with a frozen engine. It rolls. Yeah.
Now that the car was in the front yard, I actually had some computer work I needed to do. I needed to code all 6 injectors to my engine computer and see what codes still remained. Well. It looks like I forgot to plug in the turbo actuator. I don't know how that happened, but luckily I was just able to pull the connector out and then plug it in, no problem. The other 2 codes are going to be a little more complicated. These are for the ash content of the diesel particulate filter, and basically I need to get it on the road and do a regen. But based on the high ash content and recent engine failure, I think it's safe to assume that the previous owner had not been using the properly spec'd oil for a long time. So now let's finally drive this thing. I only wanted to go around the neighborhood doing less than 40 miles an hour. I was nearing the end of my test drive when I suddenly noticed the car was in limp mode. And not just any kind of limp mode, but a very clear transmission limp mode. The engine was continuing to rev, and I noticed right away that the gears were not shifting. So this was familiar to me. I had this happen to me on Shorty, if you guys remember. This is actually why we made the original transmission service for the T1N. You guys can check this video out below. A conductor plate fixed this issue for this van, and I suspected this car needed the same thing. Yep, there was a P2716 code that suggests that there is an issue with the conductor plate on this transmission. And that's where we're at now. Now, normally this is the type of thing we'd do the service, we'd replace the conductor plate. However, Mercedes changed a lot of things for the worse on the NAG2 7-speed transmission. For example, I cannot buy a conductor plate for this car. Mercedes was happy to tell me that it would cost $616 new from Germany and that there's only one left in Germany. But once again, I cannot buy it. Mercedes told me that I would have to have my car towed there and let them do all the work of installing it and coding it. Well, really, what that means is they're going to have me tow my car in and probably try to sell me a new transmission. So the reason behind this is that Mercedes actually integrated the sensitive transmission control module into the conductor plate. That's right, the video we just made on fluid wicking up to the TCM, yeah, they put this part in the transmission fluid. I guess you don't have to worry about fluid wicking if it's already in the transmission fluid. Did I mention there's no dipstick either? You pretty much need to pump transmission fluid in from the drain plug and let it overflow out of the plug. We've already drained some fluid out. It's still got a red tint and doesn't look, smell, or even indicate that it's been tortured at all. There's no German sparkle party either, even after dropping the pan and shipping the module off to Module Repair Pro. I really wanted to wait until this car was fully moving and driving, and I was so close. But this transmission issue, unfortunately, has halted this project for now.
Oh, hey! Thanks for joining me in the after credits scene. Instead of a blooper or something else, we're going to do something a little different. I want to take a moment to tell you guys about my new job. I am now lead Unity developer for Collision LLC, and that is a small startup gaming company in Orlando, Florida. They're local to us, and I am their lead Unity developer. So currently I'm developing the digital version of a physical card game called Collision Gate. So please look forward to seeing Collision Gate in your app stores, your Play stores. We're also planning on releasing it on Steam. We're starting an Indiegogo campaign at July, and I've been able to create a lot of the game in a little less than 3 months. So in the current version, it is fully networked, dual synchronized. Not all the card effects have been implemented yet, but we've got a lot of the game done already, and it's really just finishing touches now. So that's what I've been hard at work on for the last few months. And thank you all for supporting Florida Van Man.